So buckle up, because this one is a ride. My name is Emily. I am 21, and right now I am sipping a cheap glass of red wine in the house my grandma left me while wondering if I am the villain in my own family sitcom. Spoiler, I do not think I am, but you can decide for yourself. To back it up a bit, my childhood was the kind of cheesy middle-class American dream people put in Hallmark commercials. My dad, Mark, who is now 46, worked as a mechanic and swore that WD-40 could fix literally everything. My mom, Sarah, was a third-grade teacher with a laugh so contagious that she made even boring PTA meetings fun. They did not make a lot of money, but we were not suffering either. Money was tight, sure, but never desperate. We had Friday movie nights with popcorn, summer camping trips where Dad pretended to be Bear Slayer Johnson even though he could not light a campfire to save his life, and baking days with Mom where I ate more cookie dough than actual cookies. I was a total daddy's girl, but I was also Mom's favorite little sidekick. I was the kid who stayed after dinner to help wash dishes instead of bolting upstairs like most kids my age. Then life sucker punched me when I was 18. My mom got sick fast. One month she was just feeling tired, and the next month it was endless hospital visits and test results that never seemed to get better. The medical bills piled up like Jenga blocks, and insurance covered barely anything. By the time she passed, my dad and I were drowning in grief and unpaid hospital debt. That whole year still feels like someone smeared Vaseline over my memory reel. It is fuzzy, foggy, and nothing feels clear. For a while, it was me and Dad against the world. We would sit out on the porch together at night, half talking, half silent, just trying to hold ourselves together. Then about 3 years later, Dad started dating again. I wanted him to be happy. Honestly, he deserved to have some light back in his life. But of all the people in the dating pool, he reeled in the biggest catfish. Her name was Stephanie. Now, let me paint this picture for you. Stephanie, who was 39 at the time, was the type of woman who called Starbucks baristas sweetie in a tone that was more threat than kindness. She thought shopping at Target was low class, but also clipped coupons like she was competing on extreme couponers. She had a spray tan so orange that traffic cones were jealous, nails sharp enough to be classified as weapons, and a high-pitched, fake sweet voice that could peel paint off the walls. She also came with baggage, namely her 2 kids, Jake, who was 8, and Chloe, who was 6. If Dennis the Menace had feral twins raised on energy drinks and iPads, that is exactly what these gremlins were. One time they poured maple syrup on my MacBook because they thought it was hungry. That little stunt cost me $600 in repairs, and when I told Stephanie about it, she just shrugged and said, "Kids will be kids." Right, except most kids do not try to feed electronics pancakes for breakfast. Now, here's the kicker. I do not even live with my dad. I live in my own house. My grandma left it to me before she passed, and it has been the one stable thing in my life since my mom died. The deed is in my name, and I pay the taxes, utilities, and every bit of maintenance. It is my space, my safe place. But since it is close to Dad's house, guess who suddenly became the free babysitter? Yep, me. At first, it was innocent enough. Dad would ask if I could watch the kids for a couple of hours, and I figured fine, I can handle that. But then it became whole weekends. Then, without so much as asking, I would come home from class to find Jake and Chloe sitting on my porch with their backpacks, waving like I was their assigned daycare worker. Stephanie would eventually come pick them up 2 days later, smiling her plastic smile and saying things like, "You're such a mature young woman," helping out like a real big sister. I wanted to scream. I am not a big sister. I am not free childcare. Things boiled over the day Stephanie decided to make her boldest move yet. One afternoon, she strutted into my kitchen, iced coffee in hand, like she owned the place, and dropped this bombshell. "So, we've been thinking. This house is really too big for just you. The kids need space. You are young. You could easily get an apartment closer to campus. Honestly, it just makes sense for a family to live here. You should start looking for a new place." I just stared at her, because it was like she had announced that Elvis was alive and selling timeshares in Florida. And then I laughed. Not just a little chuckle, I mean full-blown, belly-aching laughter that made my stomach hurt. She turned bright red and snapped, "What is so funny?" I said, "Stephanie, you do realize this house is mine, right?" "As indeed in my name, legally mine. The only way you are moving in here is if I adopt you and the gremlins, and that is not happening." She tried to backpedal, muttering something about how she was just suggesting what is best for everyone, but the fuse was already lit. That night, I got petty. I called a locksmith and had every lock in the house changed. I kept the only set of keys. Then I installed cameras front door, back door, and inside the main hallway. Finally, I sent Dad a text that said, "Hey, just so you know, if Stephanie or her kids show up here without me inviting them, it is trespassing. And yes, I will call the cops." The following weekend, Stephanie decided to test me. She showed up with the kids and a car full of boxes. She actually thought she was moving in. I cracked open the door just enough to look her dead in the eyes and said, "Oh, did you not hear? This daycare is permanently closed." Then I shut the door in her face. What followed was a full meltdown on my porch. She screamed that I was selfish, heartless, and ungrateful for everything she had done for me. And I stood inside my house, watching the cameras, trying to figure out what, exactly, she had ever done for me besides spill margarita mix on my carpet once. Dad tried to smooth things over afterward, but I told him flat out, "Dad, I love you, but if she ever steps foot on my porch with boxes again, I will file for a restraining order. Your wife needs to understand this house is not up for grabs. Period." Stephanie has not spoken to me since. Honestly, best silence of my life. So Reddit, am I the asshole for laughing in her face and refusing to give up my house or babysit her kids? After the whole "Stephanie tried to move into my house" fiasco, I honestly thought the message had been delivered loud and clear. Locks changed, cameras installed, boundary set. I was not playing around. For a while, things were blissfully quiet. No sticky fingerprints on my counters, no mysterious crayon hieroglyphics on my walls, no screaming matches between two feral children echoing through my hallways. I could actually sit in my living room, drink my wine, and hear nothing but the hum of my fridge. It was peaceful. It was mine. But peace in this family never lasts. A few weeks later, Dad called. His voice had that tone parents get when they're about to ask for something they know you will not want to give. He started with small talk, asking how classes were going, if I had been eating enough, and how my car was running. That was already suspicious, because Dad never asked about that much at once. Then he slid into the real reason for the call. He said that Jake and Chloe were having a hard time adjusting lately, and that the house I lived in, my house, had always felt like a second home to them. He said they saw it as their safe space and wondered if I would reconsider letting them use it when they needed a break from everything. I sat there, phone pressed against my ear, staring at the ceiling like I was waiting for lightning to strike. A safe space? For the kids who once smeared peanut butter into my heating vents because they thought it was funny? For the same kids who had managed to snap my shower curtain rod in half during what I can only assume was an Olympic-level game of tug-of-war? My house was not a safe space for them. It was a playground they destroyed every chance they got. I reminded Dad that this was not his house, not Stephanie's house, not their family home. It was mine. I reminded him that every single time those kids came over, I paid the price, literally. Utilities skyrocketed. My water bill shot up when they decided baths were better as indoor swimming pools. My electricity bill spiked from every light being left on in the house at once. My gas bill climbed because apparently they thought the thermostat was a slot machine and just kept hitting buttons. So I asked him a simple question. Who exactly would be paying the extra $400 a month it costs me in utilities when those kids were here destroying stuff? Crickets. I told him safe spaces cost money just when I thought Stephanie had finally gotten the message and retreated back into her orange spray tan lair. She decided to outdo herself. If the lock changing and porch meltdown weren't enough humiliation, she clearly sat around plotting her next move like a soap opera villain. It started subtly. One afternoon, I opened my mailbox and noticed a stack of envelopes that had nothing to do with me. PTA newsletters addressed to Mrs. Stephanie Parker, Kohl's coupons with her name plastered on them, even a pre-approved credit card offer that was very much not mine. At first, I thought it was a simple mailman mix-up, until it kept happening. Every day, more of her junk started showing up. My box was overflowing with catalogs and discount flyers I had never signed up for. The kicker was when I pulled out a letter addressed to her regarding student activity fees for Chloe. That was the moment my stomach dropped. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. Curious, I did a little digging online, and that's when I realized what she had done. She actually filed a change of address with USPS. She listed my house, my legally deeded property, as her family's residence. In her mind, she wasn't just trying to sneak in with boxes anymore. She was going for paperwork, mail, and official documents to prove she lived here. If that change had gone unchecked long enough, she could have used it to establish residency claims, receive benefits, or just make my life a bureaucratic nightmare. I wasn't about to let that happen. The very next morning, I gathered my deed, my driver's license, and a folder of proof showing that this house was mine, then marched straight into the post office. The clerk behind the counter looked tired, like she had already dealt with 10 angry customers before me, but when I laid everything down and explained that someone had fraudulently tried to redirect their mail to my property, her eyes nearly popped out of her head. She pulled up the records, and sure enough, there was Stephanie's application, complete with her full name, and the request to have all of her family's mail rerouted to my house. The clerk immediately flagged it, scribbled notes across a form, and told me this was not just a postal issue, it was mail fraud. And mail fraud is a federal offense. She gave me the paperwork to fill out, took copies of my deed and ID, and told me it would be escalated to the postal inspectors for investigation. Walking out of that post office, I felt a weird mix of anger and satisfaction. Anger because Stephanie had tried such a sneaky, underhanded stunt, but satisfaction because this time, she had stepped into territory that wasn't just my word against hers. She had messed with the federal government, and that never ends well. Fraud investigation is now pending. After the USPS stump blew up in Stephanie's face, and she realized she could no longer play house with my address, I figured she would lay low for a while. If someone had a fraud investigation hanging over their head, most people would at least attempt to behave. But no, not Stephanie. She thrives on drama the way most people thrive on oxygen, and if there's none to be had, she manufactures it. The next round of nonsense started over at my dad's place. He still lives in the same modest house I grew up in, a small but cozy place that was always filled with the sound of laughter when Mom was alive. Now it is filled with the sound of Jake and Chloe body slamming each other like they are auditioning for WWE. Dad is a patient man, but even he has limits. He bought himself the new flat-screen TV a while back, probably the nicest thing in his living room. It was his little treat to himself after years of working 6 days a week as a mechanic. It was something he genuinely enjoyed, sitting down after a long day and watching his shows in peace. So, of course, during one of Jake and Chloe's infamous wrestling tournaments, the inevitable happened. A flying elbow drop, a toppled lamp, and then a sickening crash. The TV was toast. Not cracked. Not dented. Toast. It looked like it had been thrown out of a moving vehicle, screen shattered into spiderweb lines. Now, any rational parent would look at their kids and say, "You broke it, you are responsible." But Stephanie? She decided this was my fault. According to her, if I had been more supportive and opened my heart and home to the kids, they would not have been forced to wrestle in the cramped space of Dad's living room. She said they were bored to destruction, and their boredom was the direct result of my refusal to provide them with the entertainment and safe space of my house. When I heard this, I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. The mental gymnastics required to blame me for a TV breaking in a house I was not even in were Olympic level. It was not enough for her kids to destroy my property in the past. Now she wanted to hold me financially and emotionally responsible for things they wrecked elsewhere. I decided to hit her with the same energy she gave me. I told her I would Venmo her $5 for duct tape, since apparently that was how she fixed everything anyway. It was my not-so-subtle jab at the way she slapped quick fixes on everything in life, from her spray tan to her couponing obsession, and now, apparently, to broken electronics. That was the final straw for her. Within minutes of sending that message, I saw the little user not found notification pop up. Stephanie had blocked me. After the TV fiasco and Stephanie blocking me, things actually went quiet for a while. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, though, the storm clouds brewing kind. My dad kept his usual contact with me, but there was this heaviness in his voice every time he called. The man who used to joke about fixing everything with WD-40 suddenly sounded worn down, like someone who was trying to keep a crumbling dam from breaking with nothing but his bare hands. Then one Saturday afternoon, he showed up at my place. Alone. No kids, no spray tan banshee, no SUV full of chaos. Just Dad, standing on my porch with a six-pack in one hand and a look on his face that I hadn't seen since the days after Mom died. I let him in, and for a long moment, we just sat there in the kitchen, him nursing a beer, me sipping coffee, both of us waiting for the other to start. He finally admitted something I never thought I would hear. He was starting to see the cracks with Stephanie. Apparently, she had blown through his savings on what she called a boutique business venture. Translation: she was buying bulk orders of cheap shine clothes and trying to resell them on Facebook Marketplace at triple the price. She had convinced herself she was going to be the next big online fashion mogul, even talking about brand partnerships and exclusive launches, while in reality she was sitting in the living room surrounded by poorly folded polyester dresses that nobody wanted. When Dad told me how much money she had sunk into it, my jaw nearly hit the floor. He had worked his entire life, saved carefully, and she had managed to burn through thousands of dollars in a matter of months. Worse, she was hiding it under the guise of family investments and acting like he was unsupportive when he questioned it. He told me he felt embarrassed, tricked, and, honestly, a little scared. Then he said the words I had been waiting years to hear. He should have never let her push boundaries with me. He admitted that he had stood by silently while she used my house as her free babysitting service, tried to manipulate me into moving out, and even filed that ridiculous change of address stunt. He said he had been so focused on keeping the peace and not being alone that he ignored how unfair it was to me. For the first time in years, it felt like I was really talking to my dad again. Not the version of him that had been bulldozed by grief or distracted by Stephanie's chaos, but the dad I remembered from childhood, the one who used to sit on the porch with me in silence when Mom died, the one who always had my back no matter what. He looked at me and said he was sorry, not in the half-hearted, let's move on kind of way, but in a way that felt raw and real. We sat there for hours, talking about everything. About Mom, about how he had been lonely, about how he realized he was losing parts of himself by trying to make something work with a woman who treated everyone around her like tools in her personal toolbox. We didn't solve everything that night, but it was the closest we had come to being father and daughter again instead of two people stuck in the same mess. It was the first real talk we had in years. When Dad finally opened up to me about Stephanie and her shine, business empire, I had a feeling things were heading toward a crush. The way he talked about her spending, the lies, the manipulation, it sounded like a house of cards stacked on quicksand. I didn't expect it to unravel quite as fast as it did, though. A few weeks later, I got the call. Dad's voice was calm, steadier than it had been in months. The divorce papers were filed. Turns out, Stephanie had been cheating with some entrepreneur she met at one of her MLM wine parties. You know, the kind cheap Chardonnay poured into plastic glasses while someone in heels tries to convince you that you, too, can be a girl boss if you just recruit 10 of your friends into the pyramid scheme. Apparently, while she was bragging online about her boutique fashion venture, she was also cozying up with a man who claimed he was building a luxury CBD empire. I nearly choked laughing when I heard that part. Dad didn't laugh, though. For him, it wasn't just betrayal, it was insult layered on injury. He had stood by her through her disasters, watched her burn through his savings, defended her when she pushed against me, and the entire time, she was sneaking around with a wannabe business mogul who probably thinks motivational quotes on Instagram are a substitute for income. When the papers went through, Dad moved back into his old rental. It's not fancy, but it's quiet, and most importantly, it's his. He sounded lighter just talking about it, like he'd finally exhaled after holding his breath for years. And then came the text, from none other than Stephanie herself. She didn't even bother with pleasantries. It was a long paragraph about how things have been really hard, and the kids need stability, and just for a few weeks, she and the kids could crash at my house. The audacity of this woman astounds me. After years of trying to manipulate me out of my home, after filing a fraudulent change of address, after blaming me for her kids destroying property she didn't even own, she really thought I would open my door and let her in. I didn't even hesitate. I replied, "Santa's real," and he said no. Then I blocked her number. And just like that, it was done. No more surprise babysitting, no more fake sweet voice echoing in my kitchen, no more maple syrup MacBook incidents. Just me, my house, and my peace. For the first time since Mom died, I feel like I can actually breathe. The moral of all this is simple but powerful. Boundaries are not optional, they are necessary. I learned that standing up for myself, locking doors, setting rules, refusing to be manipulated was not selfish. It was survival. Protecting my space, my home, and my peace allowed me to reclaim a sense of control over my life that I had lost after Mom passed. It also reminded me that love does not mean letting others walk all over you, no matter how close they are to your family. As for Dad and me, that night we really talked, was the turning point. It opened a door back to the father-daughter relationship we had almost lost to grief, chaos, and the intrusion of someone toxic. Over the following months, we spent more time together, movie nights, dinners, and porch talks like we used to when I was a little girl. Slowly, the bond we thought had been broken started to mend. We are cautious now, wiser, but closer than ever. I finally realized that even in a family fractured by loss and bad choices, healing is possible if you protect what matters and communicate honestly. So, to anyone listening to this story, thank you for following my roller coaster of chaos, pettiness, and eventual peace. Protect your space, trust your instincts, and never let anyone make you feel guilty for standing your ground. From my house to yours, take care, keep your boundaries firm, and cherish the people who truly see and respect you. Goodbye.